Hello, I'm Olly and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, trash. Everything I'm going to be reading for GarbAugust. So yes, GarbAugust is almost upon us, my annual reading event where we celebrate trashy books. So I have a big stack of books to go through with you today. Normally I try and limit my TBRs to like less than 10 books. I have not done that this month. I've got 28 books in my TBR for GarbAugust because I'm trying to tick off all of the various GarbAugust prompts. Remember though, if you want to take part in GarbAugust, all you have to do is read at least one trashy book. And hopefully the books I'm going to show in this video today will give you an idea of what we mean when we say trashy books. It's a term we use with affection. I'm a huge fan of trashy literature. It's that kind of hyper-commercialised style of book that often sells itself on having kind of lurid content, or having a colourful cover, the kind of book that is fun to read but not necessarily particularly edifying. So yes, I've got a load of stuff to go through with you today. Before I start though, let me just remind you of the weekly prompts for GarbAugust. I will leave a link to all of the co-hosts for GarbAugust in the description for this video, so do check out their TBR videos and announcement videos and things like that as well if you haven't already. So the weekly prompts then, so the first week, which is from the 1st to the 10th of August, is anything goes, so you can read any kind of trashy book that you want. The second week, which is from the 11th to the 17th, is category romance or men's adventure. So by category romance we mean kind of Mills and Boon or Harlequin, that kind of thing. Men's adventure, the kind of male equivalent of category romance, so the kind of action-packed kind of books. The third week, which is from the 18th to the 24th, is sex and or violence. So any books that are, that sell themselves on the fact that they are packed with either of those two things or both of those two things. And then the final week, which runs from the 25th to the end of the month, is novelizations or so either books that are based on movies or video games or whatever, or books that have been turned into TV miniseries, particularly in the 70s or 80s. So that kind of Julie Cooper, Jackie Collins style of book. So those are the weekly prompts. We've also got the bingo card. So the weekly prompts are the first dimension of GarbAugust, because of course this year GarbAugust is GarbAugust 3D. So the first dimension is the weekly prompts. The second dimension is the bingo card. So I'm not going to go through the bingo card now, but I've got books that tick off all of the prompts on the bingo card. A reminder though that you do not have to read books to tick off things on the bingo card, or indeed for the weekly prompts. You can this year watch movies instead. Because I'm a complete book nerd, I've got books for everything. I will probably try and watch some trashy movies as well though. So yeah, books or movies to satisfy the prompts. And then the final thing, the final dimension is decades this year. So we're encouraging people to read from as many different trashy decades as they can. So I've managed to cover off in my TBR the last 10 decades. So I've got books from the 1930s right up to the 2020s. Now, will I get through all of the books? I've got 28 books. You can, of course, double dip. So you can use books to cover off more than one prompt, and I'm definitely doing that. But yeah, I've got 28 books to get through. I've put them into the spreadsheet I use to track my reading, and that's 8,000 pages. So one of the books is really long. One of the books is 750 pages. So that might be the one that I read last in the month, in order to make sure I get everything else read. But yeah, there are some books that could cover off prompts that I've not got them covering off at the moment, if that makes sense. So there may be some that get culled as we go through the month if I'm not quite on track, because yeah, 8,000 pages is quite a lot even for me. Before I get into the GarbAugust book, so there's one other book I'm reading this month, and that's the pick this month for the CriminOlly book club, which I run with my patrons and channel members. So they get to pick a book for us to read every month, and this month they've picked Schrader's Chord by Scott Leeds, which I've heard really good things about. So yeah, really looking forward to that. It may be that it ends up ticking off at least one of the GarbAugust prompts, but I didn't want to rely on that. So yeah, looking forward to diving into that. It's kind of a horror novel with a kind of musical theme to it, I think. So I've got my iPad with me to make sure I don't miss any books or any prompts. So forgive me if I refer to that as we go through the video. So the first book then is A Killer Read by Erica Chase. So this is to cover off the prompt to read a Cozy Cat mystery, which we've got on the bingo card this year to remember Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. So Alice was a co-host for the first GarbAugust, a wonderful channel, and Alice is sadly no longer with us. But Alice was a fan of mystery novels and had a cat who she absolutely adored. So we've got a Cozy Cat mystery as a prompt to remember Alice. So yeah, A Killer Read by Erica Chase. I don't know very much about it, but it does look like it definitely fulfills that Cozy Cat mystery prompt. Next up then we have this wonderful book, Able Team Royal Flush. So this is book 10 in the Able Team series by Dick Stivers, or at least that's the name on the cover. Dick Stivers was like a house name for this series, so multiple different people actually wrote the books. So this covers off two of the prompts, well, three things actually, so I can read this for the Men's Adventure Week. It also covers off the conspiracy theory prompt and the more than two guns on the cover prompt. So you can see there's 4 guns on the cover of this book. These two guys have got 1 each, and this guy's got 2 because he's super hard. So the reason this covers off the conspiracy theory prompt is this is about the IRA plotting to attack the royal family, which during the 80s when this book was written was, one of those things that people seem to think was happening all the time. I'm not sure. I was trying to figure out if this came out before or after Patriot Games, the book by Tom Clancy that has a similar plot. I think it probably came out before Patriot Games. It looks like it came out in 1984, and I suspect Patriot Games was at least a couple of years after that. So yeah, looking forward to that one. Anyway, big fan of the Able Team books. Next up then, we have a book that covers off, as I said, many of these books cover off multiple prompts. This one definitely covers off more than one. So this is Blade Book 25, The Taurian Pearls by Geoffrey Lord. So this would cover off the long-running series prompt and also the nudity on the cover prompt. So I don't know how clearly you can see that cover, but there is definitely a bit of lack of clothing going on there. Greg, the host of another Bibliophile Reads or another Boobiephile Reads Playboy for the articles, as he is during GarbAugust, always refers to these books as being about a clothing optional society. So yeah, I've never read one of the Blade books, but really looking forward to diving into that. Next up, we have a book you wouldn't read on the bus, and for that one I have a Sexecutioner thriller. So this is book 8 in the Sexecutioner series, featuring Agent Cherry Delight. This is Hot Rocks. So I have read one of these before. I think I might have read it last year for GarbAugust. They are very, very sexually explicit, very cheesy books about this female agent going up against the mafia. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one, I think. Next up then, we have, if I can find it, so this is a Mills and Boob double. So this actually got 2 books in it, both of which I'll be reading during GarbAugust. So these satisfy the category romance week, but also are part of the Coltons of Summer readathon that Sarah from the channel A Bookish Knitter, who's also a GarbAugust co-host, has been doing for the last few months. So these are book 5 and 6 in the Coltons of Montana series. So there are 2 in here. So one is P.I. Daddy's Personal Mission by Beth Cornelison, which is a title that always makes me laugh. The second one is Colton's Surprise Family by Karen Whidden, which in the States was called Colton's Christmas Baby, which I think is a better title. I think there's something trashy about having Christmas in the title of a book. Next up then, we have Cry Revenge by Donald Goyne. So this ticks off the drugs prompt on the bingo card. So this is a thriller about rival gangs and drug dealing and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of Donald Goyne's, really like his stuff. Always really bleak and hard hitting. But yeah, it definitely works for GarbAugust as well. Next up then, one of the more difficult prompts to cover off is the step back cover or watch a 3D movie prompt. So I had to go out and go through my piles of trash that I've got stored in the garage. I don't have enough room on these shelves for all the trashy books I've got. I did find one with a step back cover. That is Dawn by VC Andrews, the start of a dazzling new series apparently. I'm not sure what the name of this series is, but it does have a step back cover, so you can see there it's rather nice kind of shiny cover with the face of a young girl there. And when you open it up, you see there is a creepy family surrounding her. They're very creepy and dodgy looking, aren't they? I don't know how well you can see that. So yeah, I really like VC Andrews stuff. This, of course, will have been written by Andrew Needleman because it was published after VC Andrews died. This came out in 1990. But yeah, definitely looking forward to diving into that one. Next up then, we have a book which doesn't necessarily satisfy any of the prompts, albeit it would satisfy the Men's Adventure Week. But it was written in the 1930s, so I've included it to make sure I cover off that decade. That is book 8 in the Doc Savage series, The Land of Terror, by Lester Dent. So I really like the Doc Savage books. They're hugely entertaining, very pulpy, silly kind of adventure series, and yeah, written in the 30s, so interesting to look back at, popular fiction that was written that long ago. Next up then, another book that would satisfy the Men's Adventure prompt. This is book 23 in the Executioner series by Don Pendleton, which I'm gradually working my way through. Reading them in order, there are over 400, so it's going to take me a while. So yeah, this is book 23, St. Louis Showdown. So this covers off the Vigilantes prompt. So Mac Bolan, the star of the Executioner series, is a lone man trying to take down the mafia across the whole of the States. So yeah, I'm really enjoying those books and definitely looking forward to reading that one. I've also using this one actually to cover off the gangs prompt, given that he's going up against the mafia, who are gangsters. Next up then, we have a book to cover off the weirdly specific subgenre prompt. So for that, I've got Extreme Caution by Jean Brashear, which is one of the Harlequin NASCAR romances. So a set of, and there's like dozens of these books. And in fact, I've got dozens of them because I rather foolishly bought a box of them off eBay a couple of years ago. So yeah, a series of romance novels set around the world of NASCAR racing, which does seem weirdly specific to me. So yeah, looking forward to diving into this one. I've read, I think, 3 of these books now and really enjoyed all of them. Next then, we have a book that covers off 2 of the prompts. So those prompts are Kinky Sex and Modern Trash. So the book is Hot and Badgered by Shelley Lawrenston, which is the first in the Honey Badger Chronicles. It's a shapeshifter, like a shifter romance. If you don't know what a shifter romance is, it's a romance book, typically with a human female and a male character who is sometimes human and sometimes something else. So think of a werewolf. So, werewolf books are like the kind of classic shifter romance, I think. In this book, the guy shifts between being a human and a honey badger. So I've no idea what I'm letting myself in for. I have read a couple of shifter romances before. So I read a dragon shifter romance, which I forget the name of now. And I also read one which was about, I can't even remember what so the other one I've read was not a typical shifter romance, and it was a lesbian shifter romance, and I can't remember now what creature. I think it might have been a bat or something like that one of the members of the relationship turned into. But yes, they are interesting shifter romances. I think based on my experience so far, any sexual contact that happens in them tends to happen when the shifting character is in human form, which seems a bit of a cop-out to me. So we'll see if that is still the case in Hot and Badgered. But I'm looking forward to reading it anyway. Next up, we have a very new book. So this is one that works for the 2020s decade for me, but also covers off the giallo or slasher prompt on the bingo card. This is the new book from Stephen Graham Jones, I Was a Teenage Slasher. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. Big fan of Stephen Graham Jones. I'm not sure I'd say his books were trashy, but the title of this one is definitely trashy. So yes, reading that to cover off this prompt, and also as a buddy read with one of my patrons, Chloe. So yeah, really looking forward to reading this. Next up, we have this book, John Adams' Samurai, by John Christopher. So this is a book about a European guy who travels to Japan and becomes a samurai. Interestingly, this came out before Shogun. So this came out a few years before Shogun, which basically has an identical plot. So this covers off 2 of the bingo card squares for me. So one is, actually it covers off 3. So it covers off nudity on the cover, albeit I've got a few books that do that, I think. It also covers off the kind of ninjas or martial arts prompt. I don't know for certain this has got ninjas or martial arts in it, but I'm pretty sure it will have. And it also covers off the Pax prompt. So Pax, another one sadly of the GarbAugust co-host who is no longer with us. So Pax, like Alice, was a co-host in our first year. Pax's like theme colour on her channel was green. So the prompt to remember her is to read a book with green on the cover. So I'm being a bit sneaky here because this book doesn't have any green on the cover, but it does have green edging to the pages. So this is my book I'm going to read to remember Pax. Next up then, so the prompt for this one is Killer Kids. And the book I'm going to read is Killer Kids. So Killer Kids by an author called Clifford L. Linedecker. So last year I did the same thing. I read not like a true crime book about killer kids, doing which again was called Killer Kids. I'm doing it again this year, but reading a different book called Killer Kids. So I think there's something kind of inherently trashy about true crime books because of the fact that they are like capitalising on human misery, basically. I think books about killer kids are even more trashy, because of that. So that feels like an appropriate one. Next up, then, to cover off the that final week where you can read a book that was turned into a 70s or 80s miniseries. I'm going to be reading a book I've wanted to read for ages, Lace by Shirley Conran. So I remember this book being on my mum's bookshelves when I was a kid. It has one of my favourite taglines of any book ever, which is, "Which one of you bitches is my mother?" which I think is just fantastic. It is 750 pages, so we'll see if I actually manage to get through it, but thankfully it's in that 4th week. So if I do find I'm not keeping on top of things, it may be the book that I jettisoned from my list. It also, I discovered the other day, apparently has a shocking scene involving a goldfish. Please don't tell me what that is. Don't spoil it for me. I'm really looking forward to discovering for myself. Next up then, we have the official book in my list for nudity on the cover. So this is Ladygadiva and Master Tom by Raoul C4. I think that's how you pronounce the name, and I can't decide if that's a pun on C4, the type of explosives. Anyway, this was very kindly sent to me, I think, last GarbAugust by one of the co-hosts this year, Annie from the channel Obscure Book Adventures, or Obscene Boob Adventures, as she is for GarbAugust. So yes, this is a book about Ladygadiva. Annie did say it was very trashy, and this was published in the 1940s. So this covers off the 1940s decade for me. The 30s and 40s. 30s, 40s and 50s I think I've only got one book for, and the 60s there may only be one book for. 70s, 80s and beyond there are multiple books for. Right, next up then, the prompt this book covers off is Cults. So this is a book by David Bryan, Once More with Feeling. So I read David's book, which I now forget the name of. I think it was called Breeding Grounds, which is about killer squirrels. I read that a couple of years ago and had a great time with it. This is a book about a cult, so fits that cult prompt. So looking forward to diving into that. Next up then, we have a book with an exclamation mark in the title. So for this one, I don't have a physical copy of this yet. I have ordered it, as I have Lace. I'm waiting for my copy of Lace to come in as well. So this is a book that sounds really trashy and potentially problematic. It's called Remember the Alamo. So that already gives a hint that it might be problematic. It's by Kevin Randall and Robert Cornett. So my understanding of the plot of this book is that people discover that there's either loads of minerals or oil or something like that under Mexico. So the American government decides that they need to have won the Battle of the Alamo so that in the present day they have access to all of those resources. So they send a crack team of soldiers from, I think, the present day back in time to the time of the Alamo to help the American forces win that battle. So yeah, it does sound potentially quite problematic. Right, next up then, we have a book based on a video game. And so this also covers off the novelisation week, albeit I've got another book that does that too. So I think I'm really pleased with myself here. I'm really pleased with myself until I actually have to read the book, which again I've ordered but don't have a physical copy of yet. So the book I've chosen for this is the novelisation of the Super Mario Brothers movie from 1993. So it's a novelisation of a movie that was based on a video game. So I'm kind of covering off multiple bases there. Interestingly, it's by an author called Todd Strasser. So I talked a while ago on the channel about a book called The Wave, which Todd Strasser also wrote, but it was published under the pseudonym Morton Rue. Or maybe Todd Strasser's the pseudonym, I get confused. But anyway, The Wave is a book I think is really, really good, based on a TV movie about this experiment, a true case of this experiment that happened in an American classroom that went terribly wrong, like a social experiment. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the novelisation of the Super Mario Brothers movie. I did see that movie at the cinema when it came out, and remember it like reasonably fondly. So whether or not I remember it fondly because it was actually okay, or just because I love crap movies, I'm not sure. But I may try and rewatch it for GarbAugust as well. Next up, then we have the book that covers off the 1950s decade. And that is The Count of Nine by Earl Stanley Gardner. So Earl Stanley Gardner, best known for writing the Perry Mason books, which I haven't read. I've been meaning to read. I've got this one. This is a hard case crime book. I've got a copy of it digitally, and it was published in the 1950s. So it seems like a good book to read for that. It features a like naked model or something like that, which makes it feel trashy. So the cover certainly looks quite trashy. So yeah, looking forward to that. Next up, we have a book for the Sex and or Violence Week. So this is a book by an author I've been meaning to read for ages and just haven't got round to, Philip Jose Farmer. This book came out right at the end of the 60s, and it is, and apologies for the saucy cover, it is The Image of the Beast, which is supposed to be like incredibly explicit for a book of its age. So looking forward to seeing what this strange naked werewolf woman is all about. Next up then we have Killer Animals. So for the Killer Animals week prompt on the bingo card, I'm going to be reading The Snake by John Gotti. I have also got, I've got a few different books I could read for this. But yeah, The Snake is my kind of number one pick. If I don't get on with this, I may choose one of the other ones instead. But yeah, this is about a killer snake loose on the streets of, loose in Central Park. So an 11-foot black mamba loose in Central Park. So it does sound like a fun read. Next up, we have a book that covers off a few different prompts. So definitely one I can read for the Men's Adventure Week, but also covers off the pseudonym prompt and the trash in translation prompt. So that is TNT by Doug Masters. So this was very kindly sent to me by Andrew from It Came From The Page, who was a co-host in previous years. He sent me, I think, 3 or 4 of the TNT books. So this is a series that was originally published in France. I think there are 9 books that were published in French, and only 7 of them were translated into English. This is the first in the series. They're supposed to be crazily over the top and graphic. So published in the US under the name Doug Masters, which is a pseudonym. In France, they were published under the name Michael Borgia, which again was a pseudonym. I forget now what the names of the actual writers were, but yeah, it's a kind of double pseudonym book, so that felt appropriate for pseudonym for the pseudonym prompt. Next then, we have the Sexy Vampires prompt. This book also covers the novelisation prompt or week. So this is one of the things that I think is quite interesting that's happening recently is that we're getting modern novelisations of older movies. This, I think, is a fairly early one in that cycle, so you're getting quite a lot of them at the moment. This one came out a good few years ago now by one of my favourite trashy authors, Sean Hudson. So this is a novelisation of the Hammer movie Twins of Evil, which is about sexy vampire twins. I remember watching that film as a teenager and enjoying it greatly. It was towards the end of the kind of Hammer horror kind of era, if you like, when they started injecting a bit of nudity and things like that into their movies to kind of get the punters in. Next up then, we have a book which is indeed the book of GarbAugust in some ways. So the book we are reading for the GarbAugust group read. I suppose the true book of GarbAugust obviously is the Garbology, the book we're publishing on the 1st of August to commemorate GarbAugust this year. But our group read for GarbAugust is Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Suzanne. So I have read this before and absolutely loved it. Really looking forward to reading it again. I think it also covers off the drugs prompt and also covers off the moral panic prompt on the bingo card. So yeah, looking forward very much to reading that. And then finally, I will be reading Verity by Colleen Hoover as a host recommendation. So this was recommended by Kelly from the channel Kelly Hooked on Books, or Kelly Hooked on Dino Smut, as she is for GarbAugust. Now, I know this is quite a divisive book. Some people really like it. Some people are appalled by it. That kind of mixed reaction to a book is always something that sucks me in. So really looking forward to reading Verity. So that is everything I'm going to be reading for GarbAugust, or everything I intend to read anyway. Will I get through everything? Who knows? What state will I be in if I do get through anything? Who knows? But yeah, hopefully it will be a fun month. Hopefully you're taking part in GarbAugust. And remember, you only have to read one book to take part in GarbAugust. Just one book, as long as it's trashy. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what everyone else is going to be reading. Let me know in the comments what you think you'll be reading. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.